Hey guys, you're watching Matt the Musketeer, and today I have another episode of Becoming a PC Gamer. Now in today's episode, we're going to take a look at becoming a PC gamer for the cost of an Xbox One. With the next generation of consoles on the way, and the next generation of the Battlefield series on the horizon as well, we have a lot of people now considering whether to stick with their consoles and move on to the next generation, or move across to PC. So today, I'm going to show you guys which components and parts you can buy to build your own gaming PC for the cost of an Xbox One. Now we know the Xbox One costs £480 in the UK, and this is a price for the original base model of the Xbox One. Further down the line we might see more expensive Xbox Ones be released with larger hard drives and better components inside, as we did see with the Xbox 360. So the price of the Xbox One could actually go up in the future, but for the moment we're basing this off the base model of the Xbox One at £480. Now for this cost we are not going to be including any peripherals such as keyboard or mice or speakers or monitors, because of course with the Xbox One you don't get the television or surround sound system with it. Of course you do get a controller, but today we are only going to be taking a look at the components, the case and the operating system for your new gaming PC. Now I will say straight up that some of these components aren't quite as good as the ones featured in the Xbox One, but here we're talking about longevity and customization. Of course with the Xbox One the components you buy now will be the same ones you will have to use in 8 years time. The computer you're building today may not be as good as the Xbox One, but is a base platform to then go from and expand and improve over time. Gaming PCs are all about customization and having the option to improve the PC at any time, so today what we're building might not be as comparable to an Xbox One, but it's a really great starting point to moving across to the gaming PC world. So let's go ahead and jump straight into the build. Now to begin with we're going to take a look at the CPU. Now for this particular build I have given you the option of two different CPUs, and you'll see the reason for that later on when we come back to the GPU. Now for this build you have to remember we're trying to get as much power and performance as we can for as little money as possible. £480 is quite a tight budget for a gaming PC. So for this build I have gone with AMD processors, as they're a little bit cheaper than Intel but they still have great performance for value. Now for this build, the cheaper of the two options is the FX 6300 AM3 Plus, which is quite comparable to a base model or mid-range Intel i3 processor. And the more expensive is the FX 8320 AM3 Plus, which is a little bit more comparable to a base model i5 processor. Now as I said, these are still really good processors, but they're a little bit cheaper than Intel. Of course here we're trying to save as much money as possible. Now moving on to the motherboard, I have picked the Gigabyte GA970A DS3. And the reason for that, it is great value for money, and it supports the AMD AM3 Plus processors which we have picked for this build. It also allows crossfire and SLI of graphics cards, which is very important. As I mentioned earlier on, building this base model PC is all about customization and optimization in the future. Allowing yourself the crossfire and SLI graphics cards and improve the power of your PC is very important. Now moving on to the memory, we're going to put as much RAM into this computer as the Xbox One. Now the Xbox One does have 8GB of GDDR5 RAM. Now GDDR5 RAM is pretty state of the art and pretty expensive RAM, so we won't be having GDDR5 in this build, we will be sticking with DDR3 RAM, but all the same it will be 8GB and it will be 1300 MHz of RIPJAW's 8GB RAM. Now 8GB is more than enough to play Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 in the future. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the GPU, or the graphics card, the part of the computer that people get most excited for. Now as I said earlier on, I do have different options for different graphics cards depending on which CPU you have selected. So if you go for the cheaper FX 6300 CPU, to keep it under £480 you can afford the more expensive Radeon HD 7850 2GB graphics card. Or if you pick the more expensive CPU, the FX 8320, you will then have to pick the less expensive Radeon HD 7790 graphics card, still 2GB, but not quite as impressive as the 7850 card. Obviously, we're trying to still keep it under £480. Now of course, if AMD cards aren't your thing, you can go for the GTX Nvidia 660 card, which for playing Battlefield is a little bit more recommended. Of course, Nvidia cards are just a little bit more expensive than AMD cards. Now for hard drive space, for this build I haven't included a solid state drive to try and keep the price down, but I have gone for a Samsung Sata III 500GB hard drive with a 6GB speed. Now another option for the hard drives is to go for a hybrid hard drive, a mixture of solid state and a standard hard drive. Now this is a little bit more expensive, but it will improve the speed of your computer and the performance. Now of course, to bring life to all of these components, you will need a PSU. Now for this build, I've tried to mix and balance between power and price. And for this build, I've gone for the option of either a 450 watt Corsair power supply or an Agility 500 watt power supply. Of course, if you want to add later on more graphics cards to your unit, you may need to buy a bigger power supply. Now of course, we need ourselves a case to hold all of these components in place. Now this is where we can really save ourselves some money. But for this build, I haven't sacrificed aesthetics just for the price. I have gone for the CiT Vantage case, which is a very good looking case with up to 4 fans and space for up to 4 hard drives, but it comes in at under 40 UK pounds, so it's very cheap for the quality. And finally, we need ourselves an operating system. Now to keep the cost down and from personal preference, I have gone for the home edition of Windows 7. Personally, I'm not a big fan of Windows 8, and of course, since the release of Windows 8, Windows 7 has dropped in price. Now of course, all of these components and parts are just based on my own experiences and preferences. If any of you guys have different components that you think might enhance this build, or maybe just from your own experiences that you prefer, tell me in the comments below. And if you do have an interest in any of these parts and components, I have listed them in the description for you guys to use at your own leisure. And don't forget guys, if you have enjoyed this video, please give me a like and a comment below, it helps me out so much. But in the meantime guys, thank you for watching, and I will see you soon.